Hello, and welcome to the first episode of The Possibility of Poetry. My name is Jackie. I've been a high school English teacher for 30 plus years, and my intention for this podcast is to take the mystery out of poetry. So let's start with the title of the podcast Possibility of Poetry. So, possibility, here's your first lesson. Words have multiple meanings, connotations, right? Different emotional attachments to them. So, possibility, it could mean danger, it could mean risk. And it's true. Poetry is powerful. It represents some danger. And you interacting with it represents some risk. That brings us to this picture that's right behind me here. This is a picture of the fool from the tarot. It is one of the major arcana, and it symbolizes new opportunities, play, fun, spontaneity, and risk. Working with something that you don't know if you're going to be successful at. Take the risk. Be a fool. It's okay. That's how we move forward. It can mean, possibility can mean like chance. And there is a chance in poetry. We can reject it. We can just say too hard, too confusing, too much. And then what part of human experience are we missing out on? Because the big thing about writing, about poetry, is that it shows you you're not alone. This is a lonely existence here, all in our own heads, trying to communicate with each other. These deepest feelings that make us human. It's what's in poetry, is the recognition of each other and each other's experiences. So there's a chance, if you are a fool and take the risk, that you're going to discover that somebody else feels what you feel. Or, as happens to me a lot, I'm reading, I'm like, oh my God, somebody put that amorphous idea that I had and I gave it words. How exciting. This is what it means to be human. It can also mean hope. Possibility can mean hope. And what a glorious thing that is in this day and age. We, well, our communication goes so fast. We have reels and we have shows and we have this and we have that. And oh my gosh, poetry is a slower communication. And I think because of that, a deeper kind of communication, because you have to take some time with it. You may have to read it more than once. You may have to write it on a piece of paper and put it in your pocket and carry it around with you. And then when you go to take out your keys, there it is. And we can look at it one more time. It's going to go slow, but there's hope. There's hope there. There's hope in every poem. And that hope, again, is that we can communicate with each other what it means to be human on this planet. So taking the mystery out of poetry. That's what we're going to try to do. So, the format is I'm gonna read you some amazing poems, and I'm gonna give you some suggestions. And if you want me to give you the big poetry words for it, I can, but I feel like sometimes that gets in the way of meaning. That's when we're like picking at a poem and being like, oh, that's imagery and that's connotation, and there we have anaphora, and there we have this, and it's fun. I like it. I like all those big words, but that doesn't always. I want to be careful there. I taught AP Lit for a lot of years, and um, it does add to meaning. You let it. That you can read a poem and not know all those words, and it's still going to be meaningful to you. Oof, I caught myself there. That was something. Okay. Our first poem is by a poet named Billy Collins, and it is called Introduction to Poetry. Oh, how fitting. And again, I invite you to be a fool, to take a risk, to understand the possibility of what this poem could mean to you. For our first reading, um, if you're not driving or something, maybe close your eyes if you want to get all hippy dippy on it or not. But try to refrain this first time through from trying to make meaning. Just let it flow. Let things stick out that stick out. Let, gloss over things that don't. All right? I give you that permission. Here it goes. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. Letting that settle, thinking about what stood out, what popped up in your mind. If anything, it's okay if nothing did too. We're going to read it one more time. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. So I'm going to give you some suggestions, something, I'm going to ask you some questions because, teacher. And we'll see. All right. So we start with I asked them to take a poem and hold it to the light. Well, I asked them to take a poem. Let's start right there. Okay. So what do we have? We have Billy Collins, we have a teacher, and I does not always mean the author, but it can. Hold it to the light like a color slide. Oh my God, that's such an old-fashioned reference. If any of you that old, do you remember that when you got back from like the photo mat and yeah, and you had these colored slides and you had like a machine that you had to put it in, right? But you could hold that slide up to the light. That was the only way you could figure it out. So think about it. Okay, so there's like a structure around it and it's so small, you can't really make it out. You can make out that there's something there, and maybe if you were there, you can remember it. Or press an ear against its hive. Oh my gosh, it's a beehive. I've seen my ear. First of all, I'm just going to be dangerous. Okay, we already talked about this. The danger of poetry. Just kidding. But also, like, what do we think of? Bees, honey, sweetness. We think busy bee. We think like community, like bees can be a community. We think of yeah, danger, stinging, yeah, that sort of thing. Okay, so what do we got? We got a poem that could be a little piece of light that you can't really see, but you get images. It can be something dangerous but sweet against your ear. So then he says, uh, I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out. So do you see that? Like I see a big wooden maze, right? With like thieves and the little mouse is trying to get his way. Okay, probe is a troublesome word, but we're going to use it in the best sense. Remember, we started this whole thing with like words have multiple meanings and multiple connotations. Probe can have a bad connotation. We're going to ignore that part and pretend like instead that probe is to, as a curiosity. The mouse is curious to get out of this maze that the poem is. And then he says, I want them to water ski across the surface. Oh, wait, back. Okay, sorry. First, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. Connect there. Do you remember doing that? Do you do that? Did I just do that this morning? Did you just do that this morning? But that's the poem. The poem is a room that you can't see in yet, but you could. Because it's your hand looking for that light switch. It's your hand that's going to flip it up and reveal it. Hmm. Okay, so what do we got so far? Color slide. We got bees. It's hive. We've got the mouse in the maze. We've got a dark room. We're going to flip the light on. Final one that I tried to get to before. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. C.S. Williams. I see, I see Fonzie jumping the shark. Okay, if you're old like me, you'll know what I'm talking about. But the water ski and just the surface. Like, we don't even have to get into the maze, into the depths, into the honeycomb of the hive. Just sit along the top and acknowledge that there was another human here. Okay, color slide, beehive, mouse in a maze, room, a dark room with a light switch, and now we've got water skiing. Which image connects most to you? And look at this. This is the same poem, and it can be all these things. Whatever works for whoever. It is all these things to all these different um, listeners or readers. I think one thing that struck me about them is they're all the poem is always a structure. It's a maze, it's a hive, it's a room. It's something that's stable that we can interact with in that way. This huge big poetry word, you ready? Shift. It just means there's a shift. And you know this, but yet, therefore, all of those words signal something's going to change here. We're getting to a summary, we're getting to an opposite idea. Here it is. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. This is harsh. This is harsh. It's like the mob, like these students or whoever it is that's reading this poem. They're gonna torture it. They're gonna destroy it in trying to understand it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. Wow. And I can see that too. Like it makes me think of, oh no, excuse me. It makes me think of that show, The Making of a Murderer, where they got that false confession out of that kid. And it makes me think, like, when you do that to a poem, are you going to get what it really means out of it? Are you so afraid? Is that poem so dangerous? Is that poem enough of a risk that you have to tie it, that you have to torture it, that you have to beat it? Do you really get the meaning then? Think about that shift. Wow. All these adventures with the poem, the maze, the water ski, the revealing with the light switch. But then you have just tying it to a chair and beating it. And be afraid of a poem. That's what I get out of this. One of the things, you know, just don't be afraid of a poem. Just play. Be the fool. Just play with it and see what happens. Because it's all valid. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this first introductory episode of the possibility of poetry. I will have another one for you next week. I would love it if anybody actually listened to this and you wanted to send in a poem, maybe even one of your own poems for us to talk about on the podcast. So remember, there is no message hiding from you in a poem. It is all about the meaning that you make of it. Have a great day.